They were accidentally filming right before they lost their lives.
We said, bruv. I said, sweet, man. I said, no, man. No, on the right, bro. Both sides of the road, he runs over. What, bro? Go round it.
21-year-old Michael Owen and 20-year-old Kyle Careford were from the UK and were the best of friends. On April 12th of 2015, Michael and Kyle took a bunch of different substances and decided to get into their car and go for a drive. They started doing donuts with their car and sped through the streets. Michael started recording Kyle driving even though he didn't have a license, and you could tell that they were clearly intoxicated. He then records Kyle going 90 kilometers going down tight roads filled with cars. At one point in the video, you can hear Michael telling Kyle, "You're going 90, boy, slow down," but at that point, it was too late. Kyle lost control of the car and smashed the car into a wall that was right next to a church. As soon as that happened, Michael and Kyle both lost their lives. This tragedy made big news in the UK when it happened, and Michael's mother came out and stated that she fully blames her son that night for the decision he made, and she's glad that there's video evidence so that it can warn other people of what could happen to them if they're impaired while driving.
Secrets have now come out about what was really going on with that influencer mum who murdered her entire family. And the plot really thickens here because while Emily Long was posting online to a lot of fans on TikTok about her financial struggles and the prospect of losing her husband, she was also apparently stealing thousands and thousands of dollars. But this apparently wasn't her stealing money because she was worried about her husband's illness, because this was actually apparently going on way before that. She worked as a director of operations for a restaurant called Wingett's in New Hampshire. It was founded by a man called Derek Fisher, who was her boss. Now, he actually ended up filing a complaint with the police department in August due to money that had been going missing from the company. And this had been going on since 2023, which was before her husband got the cancer diagnosis. It's alleged that she stole roughly $600,000 from the company. Apparently this was like money that only she would have had access to. Interestingly, the complaint was filed a week prior to the horrific tragedy. So people are obviously wondering whether this was anything to do with it, whether maybe she knew that a complaint had gone in. If that is the case, it's obviously horrific anyway, but can you imagine how that employer must feel? He was obviously just simply reporting a crime that had taken place. Now, obviously Derek has said that he's in shock and had no idea that she was capable of doing such a thing, and why would he? Emily used a hand G from the family home in order to unalive her husband, her kids and herself. Ryan, the husband, suffered multiple G-shot wounds, and the children were killed each with just one to the head.
She entered a contest on the radio by holding her pee for as long as she could to win a Wii.
They keep telling me that it's the water, that it'll tell my head to hurt and then it'll make me puke, but
Who told you that? The intern?
yeah.
That's one of those over there?
Like, it hurts, but it makes you feel lightheaded, so I'm not sure if I'm just like...
This is what it feels like when you're drowning. There's a lot of water inside of you.
On January 12th of 2007, a radio show in Sacramento, California had a morning show called The Morning Rave, and they decided to hold a contest called Hold Your Wee for a Wee. The idea was for the contestants to drink as much water as they could without going to the bathroom, and whoever was the last one standing would win a Wii console. There was up to 20 contestants, and one of those contestants was 28-year-old Jennifer Strange. Around 6:45 a.m. the contest began, and the contestants were at the radio studio. Each contestant was given 8 ounces of water, and every 15 minutes they were given more water. Later on, they were given increasingly larger quantities of water. She had been drinking all that water for nearly 3 hours without going to the bathroom, and when she told those DJs that she was in pain, they kind of laughed it off and just told her that she looked 3 months pregnant. Jennifer had drank almost 2 gallons of water, which placed her in second place. The 3 DJs who were hosting the contest knew the consequences of drinking so much water, and even when they were on air, a nurse had called in and told them that it could be very dangerous and even fatal, and they responded by saying, "We're aware of that." Once the contest was over, Jennifer called a coworker as she was going home, and she told them that she was in extreme pain and had a horrible headache. That coworker ended up contacting Jennifer's mom to maybe go and check on her, and when she arrived at her home, she went inside and saw that Jennifer was dead. 3 days after Jennifer's death, the radio show's website showed sympathy for Jennifer's family and stated that the morning rave would be taken off the air. The very next day, the vice president and general manager of that radio show dismissed 10 employees, including the 3 DJs from the morning rave. On January 17th, they were investigating to see if a crime was committed, but by April 2nd, they decided not to press charges due to lack of evidence.
This woman was just shot and killed by her estranged husband in front of their daughter just 2 days after getting a restraining order against him. This is a story that I've seen too many times before. This is Teresa Cachuela. She was a business owner and lifestyle influencer who was married to Jason Cachuela for 11 years, but she had recently filed for divorce. The two had been having problems for a while, and Teresa even told family members that she was being abused, and she was actively getting help from domestic violence agencies. On December 8th of this year, Teresa finally filed for a temporary restraining order against Jason after he threatened to kill himself in front of her and their kids. After this, he broke into her house and hid in her garage, which is what prompted her to file that restraining order. On December 20th, it was granted, but just 2 days later, Teresa would be killed. On December 22nd, Teresa, along with her 8-year-old daughter, were meeting her mom for lunch near a mall in Hawaii to pick up some Christmas presents. This is when Jason approached them in the parking lot and fatally shot Teresa in front of her 8-year-old daughter. He then fled the scene, and his body was later found by authorities after ending his own life. According to Teresa's mom, Jason was always very controlling and had threatened to kill her multiple times in the past, even going so far as to pull a gun on her multiple times. Teresa tried to get help from authorities on several occasions, but they never took her seriously enough, and they never once arrested Jason, despite knowing about the threats that he was making and the fact that he owned several guns. He was also stalking her using a GPS tracking device that he planted in her car and installed on her cell phone. When she did finally receive some help with the restraining order, both agreed to a 1-year protection order where Jason was only allowed to see the children, and as a stipulation, he had to surrender all of his firearms. But this would prove to be useless, as it almost always is. Time and time again, we hear these stories of women pleading for help, and it's only after something horrible happens that authorities step in. In the restraining order, Teresa stated, quote, "I'm doing this to protect myself, my children, and to hopefully get him the help he needs," end quote. Teresa leaves behind 5 children. She was described as a selfless mother, entrepreneur, and an advocate for empowering women. She was an influencer with about 20,000 followers on Instagram, and she also owned a lash business, eventually going on to open her own beauty shop where she offered free makeup services to those in need. Overall, she was described as a very supportive person with a humble soul. A woman she met at the courthouse the day she went in to file her restraining order, who was also there for domestic violence issues, said that Teresa gathered all of the women around and offered words of wisdom to them. She said how they all have to be strong and do this not only for themselves, but for their babies. This is such a senseless tragedy that just did not need to happen. I've attached a GoFundMe in my bio for Teresa's family to help with funeral costs and to help with funds for her children that now have to live a life without their mom. Please consider sharing her story.
A 12-year-old girl helped stop this man who was a serial killer in the making. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Sandra Vasquez Serra and her son. It was around about 8:30 a.m. on the 1st of August 2022 when a driver is cruising along a reclusive road in Dadeville, Alabama, when they notice a young girl on the side of the road. She is walking along and she looks disheveled. She's very clearly distressed, and this driver knew that something wasn't right, so they pulled over and invited her into their car. After hearing the horrific story that this little girl had to say, they immediately contacted 911. The young girl, who hasn't publicly been named, told police that she had spent the past week tied up and restrained to a bed frame. She had been bound by her wrists and her ankles. She had been drugged, forced to drink massive amounts of alcohol in order to incapacitate her, and according to CBS News, she was also SA'd by her captor. She had endured this for 7 days before bravely chewing through her restraints, breaking her braces in the process, and being able to free herself and flee. Not only was she able to tell police all of that, everything that had happened to her, she was able to give them a name. She knew who her captor was. It was her mother's boyfriend, 37-year-old Jose Reyes. Jose was an undocumented man living in Alabama. He would be arrested only hours after the 12-year-old girl named him. He was arrested at work on a construction site. When the police arrived to his home in order to conduct a search warrant, they would find the unthinkable. There inside of the house were 2 decomposing, dismembered bodies. They would be identified as 29-year-old Sandra Vasquez Serra and her 14-year-old son. It's believed that while this murder had taken place, the 14-year-old girl, who was Sandra's daughter, was incapacitated after being drugged and tied to the bed. It's believed that around about the 24th of July 2022, Jose smothered Sandra to death using a pillow before turning on her son, who again was only 14 years old, and bludgeoning him, beating him to death. In order to dispose of the bodies easier, Jose is accused of dismembering the mother and son. However, he kept Sandra's 12-year-old daughter alive, drugged and restrained to the bed. If he had murdered this 12-year-old girl, he could be categorized as a serial killer, but thankfully he didn't. After his arrest, Jose pled not guilty by reason of insanity. However, in November 2023, this was changed to just a straight not guilty. His next hearing is scheduled in March of 2025, where if convicted of his charges, including kidnapping, capital murder and abuse of a corpse, he could face the death penalty. The 12-year-old girl is being named a hero and is said to be doing well.
This 19-year-old girl from Canada was cooked alive in a Walmart oven. The Walmart that she works at posted on their Facebook that they are closed temporarily and that there is a whole bunch of investigations going on. There's people on Facebook who live in that area and know people who work at that Walmart making a whole bunch of comments. Just so y'all could get an idea, this is the oven in a Walmart. This is the inside of an empty walk-in oven, but say there was a rack inside, there is no way that somebody would have been able to fit in there. Let's say she was putting the rack inside the oven. Even if the door behind her was shutting and then she got squished in, apparently I heard those doors are heavy as hell to shut. So now it is leaving a lot of speculation, and these are what people are saying. This person commented right here, coming from someone who works at a Walmart bakery, and we're all confused about how this happened. Our walk-in ovens have release buttons on the inside. If for any reason anyone gets closed in, you push it and it releases the latch and turns the oven off. Someone said the button was broken, but there's still no way that she got closed in accidentally. Either she closed it herself or someone else did it. Those doors don't shut on their own, and they definitely don't latch without being pushed or pulled into place. Somebody else said that the oven gets turned on by a button that's on the outside and that somebody had to have turned it on. And apparently customers heard her screaming and that nobody would find her and let her out, saying that it is a see-through oven. I don't know if she didn't come home one night and then they found her the next day, but he does have a point. Now, the one that got me was the young lady, her boyfriend, and her mother all work in this Walmart. The mother didn't hear from her daughter, so she went to the Walmart and there was blood in the bakery section. The ovens are fail-safe, meaning you cannot start it and open the door and walk in and get stuck. There is an emergency release inside. The door has to be closed to start it, and once it's started, if you open the door, it would automatically stop. Getting cooked alive must be so slow and excruciating, bro. I don't know. It sounds very weird that she was stuck inside, even though there's apparently an emergency release button. It would be so heartbreaking to hear that somebody did that to her, but may she rest in peace. Please be safe and keep your guard up.
If you're planning on going back to school soon, just trust me and turn this video off. It will make you terrified to return. This is the haunting case of the back-to-school killer. It was the 17th of October 2009 in Fairfax, Virginia. Now, students in the local area were so excited because their favourite band was coming to town, Metallica. One of the girls with a ticket was 20-year-old Morgan Harrington. And Morgan, it goes without saying, absolutely loved the band and just music in general. She was one of those girls who was a massive hugger. Like, whether or not you liked physical contact, she would just grab you in this massive embrace. She made all of her loved ones just always feel so appreciated. She was also a really intelligent girl and had really good morals. She strongly advocated for children's rights and she wanted a career in education. That night, Morgan and her friends were all at the concert having an amazing time at the John Paul Jones Arena. But around 8 p.m. in the evening, while the first act was still on stage, Morgan actually popped to the loo. Now, her friends thought it was no big deal, she would be back soon, but as time went on, they were getting more and more concerned. Then Morgan rang them and said that annoyingly, she wasn't allowed back in the arena because she'd gone out. Apparently, the security had this policy of no re-entry, which just to me is so infuriating because this is a 20-year-old girl who's now on her own in the middle of the night. Morgan was obviously disappointed, but she did tell her friends she would just try and find her way back home and not to worry. But once the show was over and the friends made their way back home, they realised Morgan had never got back to her house that night. Her friends reported her missing and police started hunting everywhere they could. It wasn't long before they did actually make a discovery. It was her mobile phone, but this actually wasn't a very reassuring discovery, to be honest, because the phone battery had been taken out. A witness also came forward with some disturbing news. They said that they had seen Morgan that night sort of stood by a taxi rank looking a bit drunk. Now, the band Metallica themselves even helped out and did a video to try and encourage people to come forward if they had any news. But sadly, that November, there was another worrying find. It was Morgan's t-shirt this time. Now, what the hell was she doing without her t-shirt and her phone? This really wasn't looking good. The case seemed to grind to a bit of a halt, unfortunately, like many missing people's cases do, until January 2010. And it's so horrific in these cases because obviously nobody wants to find a body. Nobody wants to find the person dead, but as time goes on, it's less and less likely that you are going to find that person alive. And at some point, the family just need answers and closure. Well, that January, they did get answers. A local farmer tragically found Morgan's body. And this farmer was horrified by this discovery and obviously had absolutely nothing to do with this. They just were really cooperative with police and they were just devastated, like the whole community was. And although investigators themselves didn't release any information about Morgan's death, Morgan's parents did actually confirm that this was a very violent death. And I think a couple of weeks later, the mum actually revealed that Morgan had been odd. So just absolutely horrific news for the family. Police ended up testing the DNA on the shirt and found that it was a match for an unknown male who'd attacked somebody in the same area in 2005. Now, that was obviously good news that they did have a match, but they didn't have the identity of this person. They just knew that the same person had committed both of these horrific attacks. That was until another hideous crime. In the early hours of the 13th of September 2014, 18-year-old Hannah Graham was lost in Charlottesville. I believe she'd been to like some sort of off-campus party and she was tootling along making her way to another party when she vanished. She had texted her friend asking for directions, but nobody had heard from her since then. And alarm bells started ringing when she didn't turn up for class the next day. Obviously, initially people were thinking, is she just hungover? Is she just really tired after the party? But it began to dawn on people that she wasn't even answering her phone. So Hannah was reported missing now, and luckily she was actually captured by CCTV, which did give police some clues. But this was far from a reassuring clip. Honestly, it's like something off a horror film. You can see a tall man almost like following her, like stalking her. This man was quite distinctive because of his height and also the fact that he had long braids / dreadlocks. Witnesses also came forward to say that they did see a man that looked like that earlier that evening being inappropriate with women. The same ladies then saw this man with his arm around the girl, and they actually decided to follow the pair as they felt something was wrong. They were trying to do the right thing. They tried to tell the man to back off, but they said he was actually pretty intimidating. Remind, they're females too, they're concerned for their own safety as well. Later, another witness saw Hannah by an orange car, apparently telling the driver she wasn't going to get in, and then she just vanished into thin air. It wasn't long before police actually did manage to identify the man in the clip and the driver of the car. This was actually 32-year-old Jesse Matthew Jr. And he had a horrific past. Infuriatingly, over an 11-month period, he'd been investigated over allegations of art at multiple universities. But frustratingly, he was never actually prosecuted and he was just allowed to leave. This actually enrages me. So Jesse is actually interviewed by police at this point, but once again infuriatingly managed to get away. They didn't have enough physical evidence to detain him, so they had to let him go, and basically straight after he was questioned, he fled the area. He quit his job, he just up and left. He had obviously gone on the run, which was incredibly suspicious, and his car was found abandoned in Charlottesville. A massive manhunt began, with even the FBI getting involved. Now, he was plastered all over the news, and actually, luckily, a woman on a beach in Texas just so happened to see him on the beach. She obviously immediately rang police, and I can't imagine just like casually chilling on a beach and then seeing like a fugitive. So finally, Jesse was arrested, and a month later, Hannah's body was tragically found just 5 miles from Morgan's body. Jesse was sentenced to 3 life terms for the attack in 2005. then given 4 life terms for the murders of Hannah and Morgan. In 2019, I did see that he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, and I haven't been able to find an update since.
He was the last man to be executed at Leicester Prison. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Janet Warner. It was a warm spring day in May 1953 when 12-year-old Janet decided to take the family dog Rex out for a walk along Aylstone Canal. This was her job. Her responsibility was walking Rex, so as soon as she got home from school on the 22nd of May, that was the first thing that she did, popping on his leash and taking him out for a sunny walk. As she walked alongside the area of Bluebank Spinney, she would be approached by 32-year-old Joseph Reynolds. Joseph, who was originally from Dublin, moved over to England after being discharged from the Irish Army. He worked as a labourer, but he only done odd jobs, just a casual worker, working whenever he could. He didn't have a stable job. He would be described as reclusive, shy. He was very polite and soft-spoken, and likely because of this demeanour, Janet wasn't scared or intimidated by him when he approached her. Joseph convinced Janet to go into the woods with him under the premise that they were going to go looking for some rabbits, and as soon as they were deep in the woods surrounded by green trees, Joseph would pounce. He would beat Janet, savagely punching her and kicking her, and despite being only 12 years old, being attacked by a 32-year-old man, Janet fought for her life, and she really tried. She even broke his nose. However, Joseph was able to overpower her. Using a stocking and Janet's own school tie, he tightened the ligatures round her neck, strangling her to death. There would be several witnesses to this traumatising and heartbreaking murder, all of them being children. Notably, one of the children was 8-year-old Sue Townsend, who went on to become a successful author. A group of boys who had heard the screaming, who had heard the murder happening, ran to the screaming to try and help, and they were able to catch sight of Joseph as he fled deep into the woods. The boys who didn't know Joseph's name or recognise his face described him to police as having dark messy hair, a broken nose, and wearing overalls. The sheer brutality of this crime was shocking and seemingly motiveless. Janet hadn't been robbed, she hadn't been SA'd. As far as police could find, she didn't have any enemies that would want to do something like this to her. This appeared to just be a crime of opportunity, Janet being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A manhunt ensued trying to find the killer, and hundreds of officers were put to work along with the help of dogs. Other officers conducted door-to-door inquiries, and they also had an aircraft up in the sky trying to scope out the perpetrator. Eventually, officers would arrive at the home of Joseph Reynolds and was met by his landlord, who said that he wasn't home. At this moment in time, the police were already interested in Joseph as he had a history of violence against women. Before living in England, he lived in South Wales for a short time, and while here, he was convicted and incarcerated for assaulting a woman. So his history paired with his disappearance raised suspicions. 2 days after the murder, on the 24th of May, Joseph would be spotted by an officer on the outskirts of Leicester, and he was arrested without resistance. Throughout all of his interviews, Joseph Reynolds would confess to the murder of Janet Warner. He explained how he had been planning to murder someone on that day for over a week, and that Janet wasn't even his intended target. A man named Dennis Goodger would walk along Aylstone Canal almost daily, and Joseph had scoped him out and decided that he was going to be the man he killed. But on that day, on May 22nd, Dennis was stuck at work and couldn't go out for his walk. Just as Joseph was turning to leave, that is when he spotted Janet walking her dog. He told the police, quote, "The little girl was brave in the face of death. I hope when my time comes, I will be half as brave." The trial of Joseph Reynolds was the shortest trial recorded at Leicester Magistrates, lasting only 4 minutes. Within those 4 minutes, he fully confessed to the murder of Janet, and he point blank refused to allow his defence team to insert a plea of insanity for him. He openly admitted to what he did, and he wanted to die because of his actions, saying, quote, "I deserve the extreme punishment for my crime. I am happy, but at the same time heartily sorry for the little girl and for the grief I have caused her parents." And so, at 32 years old, Joseph Reynolds would be sentenced to death by hanging. He was executed at Leicester Prison on the 27th of November 1953, just over 6 months after he murdered Janet Warner. At 9 a.m, 2 officers came outside the prison and posted a letter to confirm Joseph's death, which happened at 9 a.m. Over 200 people stood outside of the prison awaiting this announcement, including Joseph's intended victim, Dennis Goodger. That would be the last execution conducted at Leicester Prison.
How did he step out of his apartment to get his Uber Eats order and then vanish without a trace? 3 weeks ago, on March 3rd, should have been any other day for 21-year-old college student Caleb Harris. He was chilling at the off-campus apartment that he rented with some friends. His roommate had just gotten a new dog, so they were all hanging out playing with the new puppy. Around 2:45 a.m., Caleb took his roommate's new dog out on a walk. His roommate said that he brought the dog back into the apartment, and then Caleb left again, barefoot this time, to receive an Uber Eats order that he had placed. That Uber Eats order was marked as completed, but from there, Caleb Harris vanished. Just forewarning you guys, this case is so confusing. Like, I feel like there has to be some more information that the public doesn't know yet, because none of this makes sense. About 8 hours after Caleb left his apartment to go get his Uber Eats order, his roommates found that Uber Eats order left on their doorstep and realized that Caleb was missing. We do have some phone activity from Caleb to go over, but to be honest, it's not very much and a little bit confusing. It was originally reported that Caleb's phone last pinged near his apartment around 2:58 a.m., but I don't think that that is accurate anymore. Because Caleb sent this Snapchat photo you see right here to a friend at 3:03 a.m., so 5 minutes after that last reported pin. As you can see, it's marked right here, and then the cottages at Corpus Christi, that's where his apartment is. Now, Caleb's parents say that AT&T confirmed that Caleb's phone last pinged at 3:12 a.m., kind of down the street a little bit from his apartment, like a few minutes down the street. And then his phone had to have either died or been turned off. A homeless man did report seeing Caleb shortly after 3 a.m. that night. This is seen as a reliable sighting because the homeless man said that Caleb was barefoot, which was confirmed by the roommates. Supposedly, Caleb was also seen on surveillance footage barefoot and with his phone, but there's no other details about the surveillance footage, like where it came from and what time, and it has not been released to the public yet. And now that we've covered all the facts, here are like all my thoughts, theories, and questions. So first off, if Caleb was going outside to receive his Uber Eats order, it's really weird that that Uber Eats order was left on the doorstep by the driver and Caleb was just walking around sending Snapchats. I feel like there has to be something else in that timeline that we just don't know yet. I've seen some people online say that they think it's weird that his roommates didn't realize that he was gone for 8 hours, but it was almost 3 a.m. when Caleb went outside, so they probably just fell asleep, but let me know what you think about that in the comments. Guys, I'm gonna be honest, I really don't know what to make of this case. I mean, people just don't disappear. Someone has to know what happened. I feel like it makes some more sense that at some point during when Caleb's phone last pinged, he got into a car, whether that was on his own free will or he was abducted, or perhaps even a victim of a hit and run and the driver kind of panicked and took his body. I mean, it was late at night, so I'm not going to rule that out as a possibility, but I will remain hopeful in my heart that Caleb will be found safe until we know otherwise. Recently, Caleb's parents have released a reward for information that results in Caleb's safe return. They also are urging people to keep talking about this case, keep sharing it. So I'm going to add some really crucial information on the screen now. Please share this video in any way you can to get more awareness. Comment all your thoughts and theories on this case because you guys are always coming up with stuff that I would never piece together in my own head, and follow for updates.
There's been a lot of updates in the case of Savannah Soto, a pregnant teenager who went missing last week in Texas, and the case is now listed as a murder investigation, so let's talk about it. Savannah, who was 18, was 9 months pregnant and a week past her due date when she went missing on December 23rd. She was last seen the day before in Leon Valley, Texas with her boyfriend, 22-year-old Matthew Guerra. But when she failed to show up to the hospital on the 23rd to be induced into labor, her family contacted the Leon Valley Police Department and requested a welfare check. When they arrived to Savannah's apartment, they found no signs of forced entry, but they did find all of her personal belongings, including a lot of items for the baby left behind. Now keep in mind, she was due to give birth any minute, so this didn't really make sense. But LVPD stated that they heard the couple was just out of town, so there really wasn't any cause for concern at first. But come Christmas Day, when it was clear that something was truly wrong, a clear alert was issued and the search for Savannah and Matthew began. During the initial investigation, a neighbor of Savannah's came forward and said that they heard her screaming for help the day she went missing. And they also said that they had previously witnessed Matthew hitting her almost every single day, even mentioning a time that they saw him kick her down a flight of stairs. This does fall in line with the fact that Savannah did take out a restraining order last year against Matthew after an alleged assault. But following the couple's disappearance, Matthew's mom posted this on Facebook, stating her son is not abusive, but believes they were both taken against their will because, quote, he does what he does for money, end quote. His line of work was not elaborated on, but according to this post from Savannah's mom, the family thought that he was up to no good. A big break in this case came yesterday, but it only left more questions than answers. According to Savannah's sister-in-law, someone contacted her on Facebook and told her that they spotted Matthew's gray Kia Optima in the parking lot of an apartment complex in San Antonio. The complex was Colina's at Medical Apartments, and it was reportedly 3 miles away from where Savannah lived and where the two went missing. When the family received that message over Facebook, they notified authorities and then went to the scene themselves to verify, and it was there that they discovered a gruesome scene. The Kia was in fact there, and inside the car were the bodies of Savannah and Matthew. According to the San Antonio police, they were both shot to death, with each having a gunshot wound behind their ear, and it's presumed that they had both been dead for about 3 or 4 days before being found. Savannah was found in the front passenger seat with a car seat carrier on her, while Matthew was found in the back, and there have been a few discrepancies about the scene itself. The police have not really elaborated on the condition of the bodies since this is still an ongoing investigation, but according to Matthew's cousin, who recently went live on TikTok, he was found in the back seat with his pants pulled down with extremely gruesome injuries. Unfortunately, Savannah's unborn baby, who they planned to name Fabian, also died. Authorities have deemed the crime scene as perplexing, and the case is now listed as capital murder. Another twist in this case came from a woman named Annalisa on Instagram who made a post talking about how she and her boyfriend had issues with Savannah and Matthew in the past. She basically admitted to knowing about what happened to Savannah when she was still considered missing, but that she just didn't care. All of her posts have been sent into law enforcement, but it looks like all of her accounts are now taken down. So I'm not sure of the validity of her statements, but I just thought it was worth mentioning as it's kind of blowing up on TikTok right now. This is just a reminder that both families in one day lost 3 people, one of which was a beautiful baby who was just hours away from being born. Savannah was so excited to become a mom and meet her baby. She already had everything that she needed for him and was just waiting for his arrival. And the Soto family has gone through so much outside of this. Just last year, Savannah's younger brother Ethan, who was 15 at the time, was shot and killed during an argument. According to the affidavit for that, it's believed that his killing was an act of revenge for a previous drug robbery. During the trial, the man accused of killing Ethan, whose name is Victor Rivas, made an inappropriate gesture towards the Soto family. And from there, you can see many members of the family launch at Victor, attempting to fight him in court. This case is so unbelievably sad, and the person that did this is still out there. So please, if you have any information at all, please contact the San Antonio Police Department.
This is going to be one of those cases that has you absolutely sick to your stomach and completely pissed off. And if you haven't already seen this case all over your For You page, just buckle up. Crystal Candario returned from her 10-day vacation to find her 16-month-old daughter, Jalen, unresponsive in her playpen and called 911. She immediately confessed that she left her baby alone for 10 days because she was feeling overwhelmed and needed a vacation. 16-month-old Jalen died of starvation and extreme dehydration while laying in her own filth, while her evil, sick mother was posting these vacation photos to her social media account. It just makes me feel physically ill. And apparently this isn't the first time Crystal had ever done something like this. Reportedly, she left Jalen with a neighbor for a weekend, but then did not return for 6 weeks. And from what I could find, apparently this was like well-known knowledge that Crystal would leave little baby Jalen alone from time to time and just nobody reported it. They're all guilty in my mind. Crystal did plead guilty as part of a plea deal, but still ended up with life in prison without the possibility of parole, and I mean this by the bottom of my heart. I hope she gets whatever's coming to her. And to make this whole case even more bizarre, this sick monster worked for an elementary school. And this is why we've seen a rise in homeschooling in the past few years. You really can't trust anyone. I couldn't even begin to imagine what little baby Jalen went through. I mean, I'm sure it was very slow and very painful. And apparently neighbors could hear her crying for like 2 days after Crystal left her. Like at like 1 a.m. for days they heard her crying and everyone just failed her. And my heart truly goes out to that little baby. This entire case is just sick. I already know the opinions are going to be strong in the comments on this one. While you guys are in the comments, let me know what case you want to see me cover next.
This is the story of James Williams. James is a Baltimore native. He had a normal childhood, no criminal history. He was a U.S. Marine from 1983 to 1987. He then went on to be a Baltimore police officer from 96 to 2005. That's when he retired for some medical reason. But they kept him on as a police contractor until 2008. That's when he began working private security. In 2017, James married a woman named Shanteri Young. Now, Shanteri was a correctional officer for 11 and a half years. But in 2005, she wanted to do something different because she was tired of the prisoners coming into jail younger and younger. So she felt like she would start a daycare business to help them get the best start in life. She was hoping that this would keep children from entering the criminal justice system, and she named her daycare Kids Castle, and she was very respected. She had longevity in the Baltimore area. James started working at the daycare. He was a bus driver, and Shanteri thought this was perfect with his military and law enforcement background. She's thinking she's giving these kids the best protection. So on July 18th, 2022, when they shut her business down, she's pissed. But right before the shutdown, it was rumors circulating that an incident had happened with some of the children. Shanteri went to the police herself asking who was the main suspect, but they wouldn't give her any information. But that same day, they seized her husband's phone. She asked James straight up, "Did you have anything to do with this?" And he said he didn't do it. And she believed him. They was married for 5 years at this point, and it had been good. That very next day, on July 19th, James left Baltimore and went to Washington, D.C. to work security detail. While he was away, one of the parents of the children pulled up on Shanteri as she was heading in for work, and she told her every detail that happened to her little girl at that daycare. And at the end, she said it was James. And it was then she knew that it was the truth. The look in that mother's eyes told her everything, and she said all the blood just rushed from her body. She was fucking boiling. Her husband was a predator. She immediately wanted to kill him, then kill herself. She put the plan in action. She started calling loved ones, telling them that she loved them. She had not drank in 20 years, but she went and bought her a bottle of Hennessy, and she drank that shit. On July 21st, she headed to the Mandarin Hotel in Washington, D.C. with a loaded pistol. When she got to the room, she was demanding the truth from James, but he kept denying it, and disgusted by his actions, she's already fuming. She's already boiling. She shot him in the leg and then in the neck. When the shots rang out, the whole 8th floor heard it, so the police were immediately called. Now, when they got there, Shanteri barricaded the door. She told the police, "Fuck him. He's a child molester, and I'm going to kill myself, or y'all can kill me." But the police is like, "Girl, we don't want to kill you. We just want to get up in here." The standoff lasted for about 30 minutes until the police forced their way in there. And when they got in there, it was blood everywhere. James was on the floor, bleeding out, and they had arrested Shanteri for intent to kill and assault of a deadly weapon. And unfortunately, James made it. His injuries were non-threatening. He spent less than a week in a hospital, but he was transported straight to the jailhouse. He was charged with 2 counts of second-degree rape, 3 counts of abuse of a minor, and 1 count of indecent exposure. Now, this case drew major attention because everybody is looking at Shanteri like a hero. They didn't want her to do no time at all. On November 28th, 2022, she accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty for aggravated assault and carrying a pistol without a license, and that was going to give her 2 years. But the judge thought that was too light. He said what she did was premeditated and she should have just let the police handle it. So he decided to sentence her to 4 years in prison. James' trial started late October of 2024. And mind you, he got to sit at home pre-trial. He was on level 3 home detention, whatever the fuck that means. But during his trial, it had came out through his cell phone data that he was on porn sites more than 170 times from January to July in 2022. He admitted to having a porn addiction. He said he would watch porn to get himself in the mood while he wait on the children. A 10-year-old girl testified and said that James would make her perform physical sex acts in the van and at the playground of the daycare. He built trust with her, isolating her from the other children, saying that she was his little helper, giving her snacks, giving her whatever she needed. Grooming her is what he was doing. A 12-year-old also testified and said that James touched her inappropriately at the daycare, and then he asked her to send explicit pictures of herself to him, and she refused. A 7-year-old boy told investigators that James touched him inappropriately at the daycare, and then told him that he will get in trouble if he told anybody about it. He also made some of these children watch porn. And y'all gave this woman jail time? His bitch ass got sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, as he should. I can't even believe y'all let him sit at home pre-trial. That's that officer shit. They trying to stick together and shit. Ain't no way he shouldn't have been able to sit home. Chantera Young was released in June of 2025, and I pray to God that she's doing good. You did the Lord's work, girl. And she said she don't regret it and that she will do it again. I think she did 3 years or right under 3 years, but she said she still want to help the youth, work with children, and I hope that she gets to do that. And I hope she's doing well. If y'all know her or know where she's at, just let me know if she's doing all right. As for you, bitch, I hope they busting up your back in there.
Her own daughter, 8 years old, reported her mom missing. How devastating is that? That's so sad. Quick intro break to say hi. Hi guys, how are you all doing today? I've had such a good day, but I just got so sleepy. I'm so sleepy. I don't know why. I'm also not comfortable. I'm sitting on the floor, but I want to sit on the couch. It's just like a little bit too far for me to sit, but like I feel like this is too up close. I hope this is the other option. And I don't think you want that. So this is what we're dealing with. I hope I'm like not too close to you. I hope I'm not invading your privacy. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's get into today's story. Today we're talking about Paige Meredith Bergfeld. She was born in Georgia, but later lived in Denver, Colorado. She studied nursing, which checked out with her personality because she was just a very caring, nurturing, loving person. At school, Paige met and fell in love with a man named Ron, who she would go on to marry. They moved in together and they were very happy until Paige was ready to have children, but Ron was not. And having children for Paige was a must-have. The one thing that she wanted to be was a mother, and if her husband didn't want children, well, he would not be her husband anymore. So they got divorced, but in 1997, while Paige was working at a gentleman's club adult dancing club, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Paige met Rob Dixon, a wealthy businessman who instantly caught her eye. He was a walking green flag, really. He ticked all of her boxes, and most importantly, he wanted to become a dad. So the following year, the two of them got married. They moved into a big house in Grand Junction, Colorado, and they had 3 children together, which really was Paige's dream coming true. Again, all she ever wanted was to become a mom. Now she had the husband, the nice house, the happy family with 3 loving children who she would do anything for. She had it all. That was until business started to go downhill for her husband, Rob, and they were losing a lot of money, which in turn became a big financial strain in their relationship, and things just got worse and worse. Their relationship became a very unstable, volatile relationship to the point that Paige once called 911 after a dispute that both of them had in 2004. Paige called to report that her husband had threatened her and the lives of their 3 children, but when the cops showed up, the couple said that they had resolved the issue on their own and they didn't need the cops anymore, even though Rob held on to the fact that Paige only made that 911 call to lie and make him look like a horrible person. A year later, Paige called the cops on Rob again, claiming that he had lost his temper and attacked her. That ended with Rob getting arrested and charged. He had to take anger management classes for his charges to later be dropped. In regards to that incident, Rob again believes that Paige only did that to ruin his reputation and to make him look like a bad guy. In 2006, their marriage ended in divorce. Rob moved away to Pennsylvania. Paige stayed in Colorado. She kept the house and custody of the 3 children. Now, Paige was a single mother, responsible for taking care of 3 kids, and she worked doing things here and there to try and make money because she had to. She started a little preschool dance business. She would have recitals twice a year and make costumes for all of her students. And she also worked in selling kitchen supplies. So Paige was doing well for herself and for her family, but there was something heavy weighing on her. Because in the summer of 2007, Paige confided in a friend as well as in some coworkers that she was scared for her life. She made little comments about being scared for her safety and for her children's safety, claiming that she was scared of her ex-husband, Rob. The people she spoke about this to just comforted her and did what they could do to make her relax a little bit, just telling her that she'd
be okay, that Rob was living on the East Coast now, he was doing his own thing, and the chances of him coming after her or doing something crazy were low. During this time as well, Paige had been reconnecting romantically with her ex-husband, her first husband, Ron. I know it's confusing, Rob and Ron, but stay with me. June 28th of 2007 was a Thursday. That day, Paige had plans to meet up with her first husband, Ron. She was really looking forward to it. They met up, hung out, had a great time, said bye. Ron called Paige when she was on her drive home, and he told her to let him know when she got back to her house. She said she would, but she never did. By the next morning, Ron's calls to Paige are still going unanswered, and he was getting worried. Friday comes and goes, and by Saturday, Paige still had not returned home. That Saturday, after not hearing from her mom for 2 full days, Paige's 8-year-old daughter, along with a live-in nanny, goes down to the police station to let them know that her mom has gone missing. Ron also got in contact with police to let them know that Paige had disappeared, but he had something else to say. He told authorities that Paige worked in the adult entertainment industry, that she was out on the internet under the name Carrie, posting advertisements about herself and how much she charged for her services. Ron told authorities that he thought that it was important for them to know that because he claimed that after they hung out on Thursday, Paige had mentioned that she was going to go meet up with some clients. Mind you, nobody knew about this type of work that Paige was doing. This was kept a secret to everyone, to her friends, her parents, her kids. Paige didn't tell anyone about this side of her life at all. But it was proven to be true because Paige posted as Carrie, writing that she was willing to either go to people's houses or meet up with people at her own office space. And she did have an office space rented out, and her phone records show that she did have clients, which, great, no judgment here. If that's the way that she was making money and she was comfortable with that, good. Regardless, it was something important to take into consideration. Investigators also got in contact with her ex-husband, Rob, her second husband that she had mentioned that she was scared of, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect because it was ruled that there was no way that he could have been in town when Paige would have gone missing, but he was extremely devastated to hear about her disappearance, and he flew to Colorado to take care of their kids. Her ex-husband, Ron, was also looked into because after all, he was the last person to have known to be with Paige the day that she disappeared, but no one really had any reason to suspect him, and he was also very devastated. Investigators also considered the idea that Paige may have left on her own accord. She was a grown adult, maybe she just left on her own. Although that theory wasn't really believed by anyone because of how much Paige loved her kids. A sheriff stated, quote, "There's nothing in our investigation at all that leads us to believe that she had abandoned her life or abandoned her children and gone off in that regard," end quote. And Paige's father as well also reiterated, that's a hard word, reiterated, how much Paige loved and cared for her kids and how it would just be impossible for her to just walk out and leave everything behind. Her father said, quote, "My daughter, if she had 2 broken legs, she'd crawl on her elbows to get to her children," end quote. So the idea that Paige left everything behind and disappeared on purpose was kind of thrown off the table. Within only 3 days of her disappearance on July 1st of 2007, authorities located Paige's car, parked in a location that Paige had no association with, engulfed in flames. Nobody was around, just the car alone on fire. And investigators initially believed that this was a missing persons case, but now they see this car that was clearly set on fire on purpose, possibly in a way to destroy evidence, including fibers, hair, DNA, fingerprints, anything. And they immediately switched their thinking to, this is foul play, she was probably kidnapped and she may no longer be alive. So now they were more so looking for a body instead of hoping to find her alive. Police noticed that the driver's side front seat of the car had been pushed all the way back, indicating someone very tall was behind the wheel. And Paige was not very tall. The search for Paige continued with no luck until officers brought K9s to the area where her car was found. The dogs alerted to a store across the street from where her car was found. At that store worked 55-year-old RV mechanic Lester Jones. Lester Jones was a name that Paige's friends had heard before because Lester wanted to be one of Paige's private clients. He had reached out to her plenty of times trying to pay for her services, but Paige found him creepy and gross because he was. She had told her friends that she wanted nothing to do with him because he was disgusting, in her own words, and she was scared of him. When police looked into this Lester guy a little bit more, they found that he had a past criminal record that included and kidnapping. Neon red flags. The investigation is still ongoing when investigators figure out that Paige had a separate cell phone that she used for her adult business. They figured out that the last call that Paige took when she disappeared came from a burner phone. Then they find footage of 55-year-old Lester Jones purchasing a burner phone at Walmart. They look at those phone records and see that Lester had only used that phone to call Paige's phone repeatedly. Also, remember the driver's seat to Paige's car was pushed all the way back, indicating a tall person drove her car. Lester, Mr. Creepy Man, was 6 feet 5 inches tall.
all. Dots are starting to connect now for police. They are zoning in on Lester, and he is now the primary suspect. However, as we know, it is extremely hard to prove a murder without a body. They needed to find Paige's body. 5 long years went by. 5 years of Paige's family, her kids living in a nightmare. 5 years of Paige's kids who loved her so much, asking their grandparents when their mommy was coming home. It was a heartbreaking time for them, but in March of 2012, Paige's remains were found. They were found by a hiker underneath rocks, dirt, and leaves where she had been for the last 5 years. And through dental records, they were able to confirm that they were in fact the remains of 34-year-old Paige Bergfeld. Officers strongly believe that she was kidnapped, taken out to that area, and duct taped to be kept quiet. Lester Jones was a suspect 5 years ago, and he was more than ever a suspect now. And listen to this. They call Lester to search his cars. When they're done searching his cars, they call him and say, "Hey, you can pick up your cars now." And on the phone, Lester says, "You asked me where I buried the body?" Officers say, "What?" And Lester says, "You asked me where I buried the body." The officer says, "When did I ask you that?" You literal weirdo man. Hang up the phone. Because of his incriminating comment on top of all the other incriminating evidence against him, Lester Jones was arrested in November of 2014 and charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and kidnapping in relation to Paige's death. His trial began in July of 2016, 9 years after Paige's disappearance. Paige's then 17-year-old daughter testified at the trial, recalling how she was only 8 years old when her mom did not return home. Paige's father also took the stand with an emotional testimony in his daughter's case. After the first trial, however, yes, the first trial, the jury couldn't come to a decision, so that was declared a mistrial. And Lester's second trial began November 21st of 2016, 10 weeks after the first trial. He was found guilty of first-degree murder, felony murder, second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. After years of heartbreak and mourning, Paige's family was so happy to see the person who took Paige's life behind bars, but they have said that there is no such thing as having full closure with her death. They stated that Paige would be so happy today to see how her kids are growing up, but she should have been here today to see them growing up. I already know that editing this video is gonna piss me off, having to put Lester's ugly face on my screen. This was my face looking at pictures of him. That is all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today and for listening to Paige's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Give a compliment to someone, smile at someone, do something that makes you happy. I'm happy today because the sun is out for the first time in what feels like months. I live in the Midwest. But yeah, I love you guys very, very much, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you. 2 kisses. Love you, bye.